Oh, hello there. Welcome to Bible Minutes. This is a daily segment that I'm going to begin doing about 5 to 10 minutes each day. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through books of the Bible. We're going to look at some of the important issues such as what does this passage mean as we examine a passage, and how does it fit within the context of the Bible? And what does it mean to us, individuals? How does it speak to us? What is it telling us about our relationship with God, or aspects or characteristics of God? And so it's going to be kind of like a daily Bible study series as I take you through the scriptures. Some days we'll look at one verse, other days we may look at a passage or a chapter, and we're going to break them down. What does this mean? But we're going to make it into easy little segments. Now, if you were to ask my coworkers or some of my friends, what are Chuck's favorite things? And maybe some of you who know me would guess a few of these. The first they would say, Star Wars. And of course, I'm a big Star Wars fan. Second, they would say CD. That is CDs, as in music. I'm a huge Bob Dylan fan. In fact, I got to see him not that long ago, back in November at Michigan State University, and it was an awesome experience. But the third thing that they would say is one of my favorite things is the Book of Ecclesiastes. And, of course, it's my favorite book in the Bible. And it's strange because it's one book that many people ignore. You often don't hear sermons on it because people misunderstand this book. Often people think of the Book of Ecclesiastes and say, oh, it's a very dark book, or it's depressing, or it's just kind of a miserable book. But if you understand the book as a whole and what it really means, it's a very exciting book. And it actually brings life to us. Because the book examines questions of how do we deal with living in a fallen world? It answers questions such as, does God really have a plan? When we look at this world and we see that there is so much injustice, so many things that are wrong, and we say, well, where's God in the midst of this? And Ecclesiastes says, well, I'll show you where God is. And it also talks about some of the things that are actually of lasting value and of importance living in a fallen world. What are the things that really matter in this life, and the things that we should spend our time doing, and the things that we should focus on? So these are some of the main themes. And in fact, we even find things within the book of Ecclesiastes, such as the gospel, hidden within there. It's very interesting. There's a passage that very clearly, when you start looking at it in context, you say, oh my gosh, this is speaking about Jesus, and it's speaking about his first coming, and it's speaking about the spread of the gospel. We find that within Ecclesiastes, and it makes sense within a book that has to do with what is the meaning of life. So, the question arises, what I say is, if you're going through life and everything is going well, Proverbs is where you want to be reading. Like, oh yeah, everything, the righteous are blessed, the wicked are cursed. But when everything is going wrong, and you say, the Proverbs aren't working, and you turn over to the book of Ecclesiastes and you say, oh, this is why. So in our next segment, we're going to begin with the first chapter of Ecclesiastes. And actually, we're going to begin looking at some of the key terms to understand what does this book really mean. Some of the key terms are understanding what is the conceptualization that we find of who God is within the book of Ecclesiastes. Another question is, what does he mean when he says, meaningless, meaningless, everything is meaningless? We find that term meaningless numerous times throughout the book of Ecclesiastes. What does it really mean? Well, we're going to examine that. In fact, that's one of the keys to understanding the book. One of the other keys that we're going to examine is that phrase, under the sun, under the sun. And in fact, a couple of times he'll say, under heaven. Both refer to the same thing, but what does that mean when he says, under the sun? And in fact, that's the other, if you understand what he means by meaningless and what he means by under the sun, then all of a sudden you say, oh my gosh, this whole book makes sense. We're going to be examining those things. So after each segment, I'm going to give you a reading assignment, voluntarily. I'm not going to force you to read it. I'm not going to check your homework, but a voluntary reading assignment for you to look at and prepare for the next day. So I would like it if, for tomorrow's segment, you could just read the book of Ecclesiastes, and we're going to look at chapter 1, verses 1 through 12. So that would be a good place to start your reading. And I'm going to close here, but remember, Ecclesiastes 7:14 says, When times are good, be happy. But when times are bad, consider God has made the one as well as the other. God bless.